Oh, hi, everybody.
Hello.
I hope you're having a wonderful time, and I'm here to talk baddie to you. And so I always have to ask, is anybody in here afraid of bats? It's okay to tell the truth. Well, because bats get a bad rap. And I'm here today to try to challenge that and have you understand more about the quality of bats in the environment. And so then maybe you'll be inspired to help us save bats. Because our bats are in deep problems now with, we humans are taking over everything. We all know that, of course. And the bats have lots of habitat. And then, of course, to grow all the food we need, we have to use tons of pesticides. And all of this has such an impact on wild animals. So today I wanted to tell you a lot of stuff about bats. And I think when you leave, you're going to be in love. Woo! And then maybe not. But today I'm a rehabber, and I'm with Sarvey Wildlife Center, and I take care of injured bats and baby bats and stuff like that. And they are so delightful, and I want you to know that, but a lot of people don't even know that here in Seattle, we have bats. You know, I don't want to discourage anybody from trying to help bats, so I don't tell them that a lot of my injured bats come from the garages that they use in downtown Seattle. But I just pretend that they're not in the garages, because I think people would stop parking their cars in the garages. So anyway, so after saying all that, I have a little accent, I know. But you get used to me as I go along. So anyways, I've been doing this for many, many years, and I used to do all kinds of rehab for different animals that needed help. And then one day, someone brought me an injured bat. And at that time, nobody had had their rabies shots. And of course, you know, you can hardly ever say one thing about a bat without saying something about rabies. And I happen to have my shots from other times. And so everybody said, well, Barbara will take that back home. Well, I didn't know what to do with it. I had never worked with a bat before. Well, you know, I brought it home and it thought I was for sure a monster and about to eat it. So it did all of the teeth display and really shivering and quivering. And when it saw that I had some mealworms and I force-fed, and then that bat said, hey, she's not so bad. So that was my first introduction to taking care of bats. And when I saw, after a couple of days, the way the bat acted, I knew then that I wanted to help bats. And so I began to study about them. And so now all I'm doing is just bats. So it's very rewarding. So anyways, in Seattle we have, or in the state of Washington, we have 14 different species. There are no fruit bats in the United States. The most we have is when we get to the desert areas, we do have nectar-eating bats. So I'm going to tell you a very important thing for people that don't like bats. Bats are the pollinator of the agave plant. So if you don't like bats, you're going to love the fact that they pollinate the agave plant where you get your tequila. Yay! Woo! Boy, right away you fall in love, right? Yeah. But anyways, in like Texas and New Mexico and Arizona, we do have nectar-eating bats. But outside of that, all the bats that live in the United States are insectivores. And we're real thankful for that. When you imagine that each little bat every night can eat about 1,000 insects. And is that good with the mosquitoes? You know, with all of the plague and all the other things that nagged us, one thing we found out is that the mosquitoes thrived. And of course, you know, mosquitoes are responsible for like 10,000 deaths a year from diseases. In fact, up in Alaska, they were actually feeding on all of the big animals, like elk and moose, and they were actually killing those big animals by withdrawing too much blood. So, you know, you don't think that that could be a problem, but here are mosquitoes, not bad in the state of Washington, but in Alaska, it's like donating blood when one of them lands on you, because they take so much blood, you know, it's really quite obvious. So anyways, we have 14 different species, and all of our bats are insect eaters. So across the United States, we have 49 different species, and in the world, we have now 1,400 different documented bats. But you know, they keep finding new bats in areas that we've never researched or never investigated. So, but our bats are now being plagued by a horrible virus called white nose syndrome. No, actually not a virus, I'm sorry, it's a fungus. And it attacks bats that are in hibernation. And so what it does is it wakes up the bat from the hibernation period, and then it actually makes the bat very hungry. But remember, when a bat goes into hibernation, they're all chubby. They need that to live for 60 days without eating and living off body fat. So every time that they wake up from any kind of a disturbance, then actually it burns up 30 days of body fat. So you can imagine if you have a fungus growing on you that's annoying you and making you itch, that wakes you up. And then pretty soon, you know, all the time you're waking up, then you're actually going to try to fly out in the middle of winter where there's no food. And after that, then you die of starvation. 7 million bats on the East Coast have died from white nose syndrome. The caves are empty. Well, luckily in our state, we actually don't have so many cave bats, but we have bats that, you know, live in old buildings under the bark of trees, you know, in many opportune places like rocky crevices and stuff like that. Not so much in the caves. So luckily, we're not suffering as badly as they did on the East Coast. So that's white nose syndrome. But we do have it, and we're trying to battle it. Everybody that works with bats is working on trying to save bats from this horrible fungus. But you know, part of the problem is that when we're trying to save it, everybody's coming up with ideas, and one person suggested maybe we should vaccinate all the bats in hibernation. Hey, when there's 5,000 bats in hibernation, how are you going to do that? And then somebody else said, well, maybe we should put heaters in the caves. Well, there's whole ecosystems of other critters, and if you start cooking in the cave, well, it might kill the fungus, but it's going to kill everything else. So, you know, the solution probably is only we have to sit it out like we've always done with plagues, and eventually it turns over. But this did come from Europe, and it was came through some of the spelunkers that had used the caves in Europe and brought the spores back. So anyways, that's one problem that the bats are having. So now we're going to just have a little bit of I'm just going to go over here and move things around a bit. Okay, so my name is Barb Ogaard, and I'm going to try to do this. Okay, there's so many myths about bats, and one of the myths is for sure that all bats are blind. Have you heard that one?
Yes. Yes.
Jesus, those lights are terrible. Okay, but all bats have good eyesight. But remember that when our bats go hunting, they use echolocation as well as good eyesight. So that myth is wrong. All bats have good eyesight. Another myth is that bats like to fly into women's hair and roost there. Well, you know, the scientists said it's because when we exhale carbon dioxide, and that's where all the insects that want to bite us, that's how they find us. But you know, my idea was that a father that had teenage daughters made up that story so that their daughters wouldn't go out at night and get in trouble. Well, that didn't work out so well. Okay, so the next one is that all bats are vampires. And the truth is, of 1,400 different species, only 3 species are vampires. And indeed, they do live on blood only. But you know, they're not all as bad as we think they are. And you are the last choice. If you go to Mexico and you vacation, sometimes if you pass out on the beach, you might be a diet for the bats. But outside of that, you wouldn't be the choice. The 3 species, one species likes mammal blood only, and the other 2 eat bird blood only. They are only found in Central America, South America, and Mexico. Found nowhere else in the world. But the movie industry has ruined bats and made people afraid of bats. And bats are very gentle, and they're non-aggressive. And for you to be bit by a bat, you'd have to do something really stupid. Like if he's laying in the grass and you pick him up without gloves. Well, if he bites you, you deserved it. Yeah. Because you know, whenever you're going to deal with a bat, it's true that some bats do have rabies, a very small percentage. But if you're going to deal with a bat, you always use gloves. You never take a chance. So that's just a big fact about that. But you know, bats, vampire bats are actually very beneficial to the scientific world. And they help blind people. And in their mouth, they have an anticoagulant. So they're trying to actually find a pill they actually manufactured now called Dracula. And that's pretty... Scientists do have a sense of humor sometimes, but that does prevent blood clots in people, and that's what we were looking for. So that's just a few of the myths. So we're going to move on to see what else I have. Okay, so the truth is that bats are in a family or an order, all of their own, a scientific nomenclature called Chiroptera. And our bats are divided in by size, mega chiroptera and micro chiroptera. And so almost all of our bats that live in our state or in the United States are micros. So let's just keep moving. Okay. Now, when we think of bats as pollinators, we usually have to go to the tropics. But there's 250 products that we use here in the United States that we're dependent on the bats. And if there's no bats, there'd be no bananas, no tequila, cashews, chicle, and the list goes on and on and on. So bats are very, very important in pollinating. And then what bats do, a lot of the fruit bats, they eat fruit, and as they fly over the vegetation, they have to poop. Well, that makes sense because now in all the seeds, so that's reforestation of the forest. So carrying seeds like that is a real benefit to the ecosystem. So here we have, on the right side, that of course is your agave plant. Now, part of the problem right now is we in the United States got so attached to tequila that we kind of emptied the state of Mexico with all the tequila plants. And so now there's a big war going on because the agave plant only blossoms every 10 years. And then after it blossoms, the plant dies because in the heart of it is the pinot. And the pinot is where tequila comes from. So when they began to harvest all of the farms and the wild plants, all of a sudden everything's in trouble now. And so are the bats that pollinate the agave plant. So if we have no agave plant, these bats have nothing to eat. So a lot of the bats in that area, they all pollinate the cactus plants. Okay, so here's all our insect eaters. This is one of my bats that you'll meet today, and she'd do anything for a mealworm, as you can see. But these are all the bats that catch all the moths. Now remember that bats are beneficial not only to the foresters, but also to the farmers. And farmers are beginning to understand that bats, if they put up bat houses on their farm, they're really profiting by having to use a lot less pesticides. And so one farmer in California put up 2 boxes, and when the bats began to come, he noticed that his crops were damaged as much. And so he began to put up more and more houses, and then he began to tell all the other farmers that he was barely using any pesticides after the bats came. So right away, they take the place of us using all of those chemicals. So, somewhat the history of bats. They're pretty unique in the mammal world. Bats are the only mammals that have true flight. And bats are the longest living mammals for their body size. Our bats in captivity can live like 20 years, but in the wild, they've been known to live 40 years. And so that's pretty good. They're sexually mature at 2 years old, and they only have 1 pup a year. Now there's exceptions, like a few bats have twins, and there's just a really few bats that have 4. But bats usually only have 2 nipples, and of course they nurse their young. Now for the men in the audience, I want you to know that the bat is the most well-endowed of all male mammals. Yep. So, okay, so here's a bat sex 101. We could talk about that. Okay, so bats have a big orgy in September. And
Wonderful.
The females are promiscuous. So that means that the male doesn't have any responsibility to help raise the pups. And so what happens after the orgy, the females go into hibernation with viable sperm, which they don't ovulate till they wake up in April. And then when they wake up, all the females are pregnant. So now the females are looking for maternity colonies or nurseries to get in and make sure that their pups are protected. Because remember, their pups are born without fur, eyes closed, just like any mammal. And so they all get like that, but now when they're in these maternity colonies, all the bachelors are maybe in your bat house that you put up, waiting for the girls to get done. And then that's when the orgy starts. Yeah. So that every animal has their own ways, right?
Always.
So anyways, the gestation is about 30 days, and then all of the bats have their pup, and the pups fly in about 5 weeks. So, but the females do not take the pup. You know, like a lot of movies show the female bat carrying her pup, but most bats don't do that. They leave all the pups together, and all the pups congregate and share body heat, because remember, the fur hasn't come in yet. So it's really important, but you know what? No males are allowed in that maternity colony. Not that they really wanted to be anyhow, but yeah. So they're all out there waiting and just having a great summer. But, you know, some of the females, you know, when they're done, that's when the big orgy starts, and they repeat the whole process again. So, anyways, but when the babies start flying, if a son was born to the mother, he can't come back into the colony. So the fatality rate on male pups is really high, because, you know, he wasn't quite ready to do all his own hunting and stuff like that. And what happens is that if he can't get attached to all of these bachelor groups, then he probably won't make the first year. But all the daughters can come back and live with the moms and grandmas and aunts, so they have a great, you know, percentage of survival. But you know, nature is cruel sometimes, and we say, why would that be? But gee, it kind of proves what the male is donating to this process. Yes, sperm. Is that enough? Yeah, it works with bats. So, anyways, but you know, part of the problem is that we always, for me as a rehabber, when I get any bat in, all I have to do is flip it over, and there it is, a big penis, and I knew that. So after bats that I get in for rehabbing are the males that nobody wants to take care of. So I'm releasing some really good males out there, so we're going to work on that one. Yeah, okay. So let's change that slide. Okay, so bats are pretty unique in their physique. And actually, that light is very annoying. Okay, I'm going to stand in the shadow. Okay, when we look at a bat, his face goes this way, his body... I can't win. His body goes this way, but when we get to the pelvis area, the legs go backwards. So now the kneecaps and the toes are pointed backwards. But this is ideal for bats when you're going to hang upside down. So you can grab on with your toenails, and then actually your stomach is up against the cave wall, and you're hanging in a right position. One thing to know is that bats cannot take flight like birds straight up from the ground. They have to be elevated. So this gives them a real way to go. As they hook on, they can just push off. And they don't bang their knees on the cave wall like we would if we were hanging upside down. Now, hanging upside down, we always wonder how come the blood doesn't rush to their head like it does for us. Well, you know, all the blood valves go a certain way, so the blood doesn't rush to the head. So otherwise, we'd have dizzy bats everywhere from hanging upside down. But that didn't, it doesn't work like that. Okay, so let me see. So you can see with all the baby bats, this is an interesting fact. When they're all left behind, how in the world does the mom, when she comes home, how does she find her pup? Well, there's thousands of baby bats, and they're all calling mama, 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 you know? So she taught her bat a certain language. So the baby starts calling to the mom, and the mom gets close, and then it begins to smell for her pup. And then when she gets really close, she recognizes her own pup. You know, when we all gave birth to a baby, they could have brought us, anybody in the room, and said, here's your baby. Would you have recognized your baby? Probably not. But she won't feed any other baby. She knows her own baby. So that's a pretty unique feature. Okay, and this is our bats in Washington. And like I say, we have 14 different kinds, and they're all insect eaters, and every one of them is pretty unique. We have 3 species that live east of the mountains and never come west. And that would be the spotted bat, the pallid bat, and a very small little Myotis bat. So we have 14, and they are super duper eaters, that's for sure. And we talked already about white nose syndrome, and you can see the fuzzy faces, and that means the whole cave is probably infected with that fungus. And it's kind of a terrible battle. Okay, so we can't ever talk about bats without talking about rabies. And the truth is that maybe 10 people in USA and Canada have died from a rabies bite by a bat. So that tells you that it's pretty rare. But of course, the minute the newspaper finds a positive rabies bat, then the headlines are, get the kids in, bring all your pets in, we got rabid bats flying around. And that isn't true. And you're setting that alarm, and then it makes people all think the minute they see a bat, that the bat just has to fly by and they're going to have rabies. Well, rabies is in the saliva of the infected animal, and it requires a bite or a scratch in order for you to be exposed. So, you know, we always tell people when they have a bat laying on the ground, if it doesn't look like it's injured or wings are being held funny, then you use gloves and you pick it up and put it in a box and call a hospital like Sarvey Wildlife, and we'll take care of it and tell you exactly how to do it. Okay, so bats are really endangered, and how can we all help? Well, the first thing we can do is be interested in bats. Second is to learn as much as we can about bats, and then spread the wealth in knowledge. And put up bat houses. This is really good. And people sometimes think if you put up a bat house, maybe the bat wants to fly into your house. This is not true. If they're happy in that bat house and fooling around with all their friends and everything, they sure don't want to be in your house. I think it's always by accident when you leave a door open or something that they're chasing a moth in the summertime and they accidentally get in your house. Now, believe it or not, we know that bats entertain us. In fact, Bracken's Cave and many caves in the United States are big tourist destinations. And this is wonderful because these people by the thousands come to these caves. And I don't know of any person ever being bit by any bats emerging from those caves. So this is not true. So you can see that right here is the Congress Avenue Bridge, and that's in Austin. And the funny part is we have a bat guru. His name is Dr. Roland Tuttle, and he was in Milwaukee. And when he found out that there was 1.5 million bats under this bridge on the Congress Avenue Bridge, and they were going to pull the bridge down and annihilate all of those bats. Well, he flew to Austin and gave up his position in Milwaukee to help bats in Austin. Well, everybody was against it, and he told them how they could benefit by preserving that bridge. Number one, for all the farmers in the area, because all of these bats went out every night to the agricultural fields, and they were eating all the pests from farmers. And then because it became a tourist site. So pretty soon, everybody agreed that they'd leave the bridge up. So now you go to Austin, you can see all the bats under the bridge, 1.5 million emerge at night, headed for those agricultural fields. Every street corner sells T-shirts saying they're the bat capital of the United States. So they really did profit by it. And every restaurant has some sandwich named for a bat. So they really, due to Dr. Tuttle, they really made it. So now they're the bat capital of the world. So it's kind of funny how things turn out. Okay, so now I'm going to show you some wonderful live bats after you read that. So incontinence would be a problem with bats, no doubt about it. So, okay, so we have a cameraman, and he's going to help me show you these bats. Okay, so if you just be patient for a few moments. Take a sip of water. Okay, who should I show you first? I think I'll show you Cleopatra. Okay, she's a little female. We're just gonna find her. And Cleopatra loves mealworms, because she did find out that I'm not so bad after all. So let's see if she wants a worm now. Okay. Okay, Cleo, where are you? You're hiding? Okay, this is Cleopatra, and she is a silver-haired bat. And if you notice that the bat's wing has 2 membranes, and she got on one of those sticky glue tapes that people use in barns, and she got stuck. And I get a lot of bats in the summer when people use that tape. And it's so easy just to buy a piece of chicken wire and make a little cage around it, and you can still use it, but it's not going to do anything with them. Okay, here we go. Oh, what a good girl. She loves her mealworms. She eats about 25 of them a day. As a rehabber, you know that's pretty pricey. Anybody that uses mealworms knows that. Oh, so good. Yum, yum. So she can never fly again. The top membrane is gone. And because that adhesive is so tenacious, it's terrible. And so she's my educational bat. And as a rehabber, the only way you can keep an animal that can't be rehabbed, then you have to euthanize. And that's the Department of Wildlife's rule. So I always think it might be really good if I use it for educational programs, and then they live again. Anyway, she's beautiful. Bats are very clean. They spend 30% of their waking time grooming themselves. So that myth about bats reek and they carry diseases, none of that is true. So silverhair is a bat that is a loner and doesn't belong in colonies. And so it just likes to do everything by itself. Okay, you want another one? Sure you want another one, okay.
Yeah, of course.
She always likes me to take the head off. That's kind of the way it is. Okay, but this is a bat that loves the garages here in Seattle. So don't tell any Seattle natives that all these bats live in the garage. Okay. So this bat is a loner, and if you're hiking in the forest, you might just look at the bark of a tree and you'll see a bat hanging from that, and that would be the silverhair. So I will put Cleo away. Anyways, Cleo has been with me now 10 years, and hopefully many more. Okay, so this one is a story about a mom and her daughter. When she first came to me, her wing was injured and it couldn't be repaired. And while she was in my care, she gave birth to her daughter. And so she nursed the daughter and treated her really well, and the daughter grew up. And so pretty soon the daughter was now an adult, so I put her in with all the other guys and girls, and she didn't do well, and she kept longing for her mother and doing crazy stuff like crashing and doing things like that. So wouldn't you know, one day I went in the cage and she was on the bottom, and I looked at it and her wing was torn, just like her mother.
Oh my goodness.
So I had to put her back in with her mother, and her mother said, "Oh no, not her again." It's kind of like adult children moving home. I mean, their mother was doing really well, and now she has to live with her daughter for the rest of her life. But that's okay. So their names are Peggy and Sue.
Oh.
And Peggy is the mother, and Sue is the chubby daughter. And these are big browns. Are you good on that? Can you see them pretty good? I want you to note the fur is beautiful but for grooming. And this is the daughter on top, and the mother, Peggy, is trying to get underneath. And anyways, these are the most common bats we have in our state. They are big browns. Okay, now just hold on. Okay, all hanging upside down with bad wings. And so Peggy and Sue will be with me for the rest of their lives. Okay, so let's... Okay, that was good. Okay. Oh, yeah, there's Peggy, the dog, the mom. Oh, no, okay, so you're crazy and wild bats, okay. So sometimes it's not easy to feed them, but luckily, the first time I get bats, they actually, I decapitate the worms so that they get a taste, and I kind of force them in their mouth, and then after eating a couple, they say, "Boy, those were pretty good." And I put about 25 in the dish, and by morning, the dish is empty. So each bat eats about 50 mealworms, 25 in the morning, 25 at night, and no end to the appetite. But that means that they're doing really good. So anyways, I want you to know a couple of things about bats. Bats have belly buttons. And that seems weird, doesn't it, huh? Yeah, but they do have belly buttons. And bats' poop glows.
Yep.
And so, I mean, you know, most of us can't say the same thing. But eating all these insects, the chitin on the wings and stuff from the insects they eat, it makes a glow in the droppings of guano. So a lot of people ask me, how can I tell a mouse dropping from a bat dropping? And I say, well, it's pretty easy. Here's what you gotta do. And it's not for everybody. Take it and rub it between your fingers. If it disintegrates, it's a bat. If it's stringy, it's a mouse. Because a mouse is an omnivore, eating anything, as we know. And bats really are restricted to insects. But in the same time, the droppings glow. So if you put a flashlight on it, it glows. So isn't that unique? Yeah. So anyways, out at the front desk is a brochure that Bats Northwest has published, and it's got a lot of information about the bats that live in our state of Washington. And I know a lot of you people are from another state, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But good reading, and a lot of it can be applied to the bats that live in your state as well. So, what can we do? Okay, first of all, we can learn more about bats. Second, we can put up a bat house. And if you have children, this is a great education for them because the bats, they're non-aggressive and they don't attack us. And you have to actually be mangling a bat to be bit by a bat. I mean, they're more afraid of us than we are of them. Well, not for some people, but but you know, these are all things that we can do. And if we put up a bat house, one thing we want to do first of all is plant night blooming flowers, because night blooming flowers are pollinated by beetles, flies, and moths, which is a diet of bats. So that brings in that diet of food for the bats while your house is being used. So this is a good thing, and then it teaches children that they need to start caring about all the other critters that live on Earth, and we need to protect a lot of them. So I'm thinking that bats are a good step. And I would take any questions if anybody has any, and that's it. Thank you. No questions? You don't mean I covered everything? Yes? Oh, okay. Really loud, okay?
Is it true that bats will like have fleas, and if they fly over your pets could get them, or is that also a myth?
Oh, that's a myth. Well, we have parasites that love bats, and so if they were flying over and they lost one of the mites, you know, maybe, but there is a flea that likes odd animals, but they don't do well on bats. Yeah, so that's a myth. Yeah. Any other? Oh, okay.
What's your favorite species of bat like worldwide?
Yeah, you know, the one bat that I really loved was called the evening bat, and I met that bat in Kentucky, because I've been lucky enough monthly to, yearly we go to a big conference somewhere in the world or in the United States. And that bat was so intelligent, and it did so many different things for all the students that were out in the night netting bats. So that's probably my very favorite, but they don't live in the state of Washington. Yeah. Okay, over there.
You said they can't lift off straight like other birds, so if it's on the ground and no one helps it, how does it recover?
Well, a lot of times if they crash and they're laying there, usually when they recover enough, they'll run to a bush and they'll try to climb the bush to take flight. But if they lay there long enough, then the crows come. Yeah, so that's not great. So, you know, if you had a bat that needed help, just wear gloves and gently move it to a bush or a firewood pile. And that would be a nice gesture. And do it with gloves, okay? Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
I also know you recommend that bats have like the strongest immune system.
Okay, can you talk real loud?
You also recommend that bats also have like the strongest immune system of any animal. That they can live up to rate with their body for like 40 years, their body is like a year.
Oh, okay, I gotta get closer to you, I'm sorry. This fan is going up here. Okay, could you just repeat that?
We also recommend that bats have the strongest immune system of any animal. Like their bodies can live with rabies for like 40 years and not have a problem.
But those were real exceptional, and they had proved it down the road, you know. But sometimes some bats have carried the rabies for 2 years. And so, yeah, they do have a strong resistance. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Do you know how old the 3 bats that we got today are?
Well, you know, like Cleopatra, she's now 10. And I don't know, she was an adult when she came to me. So I'm figuring that maybe, you know, she'll live to be 15. But we just got a bat in Siberia that had been tagged, and it was 40 years old.
Oh my goodness.
So they're the longest living mammal for their body size. Uh-huh.
You said they live longer in the wild than captivity. Do you know why?
No, but you know, we have some bats that just, the hoary bat just is not, no matter what you do to make it well, a lot of times you just go in and it's dead in the cage for no reason. And it's just like some animals just cannot be confined. And I think bats are some of them. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Over.
Anybody
Over
there?
here.
Oh, okay.
I was wondering where, if you wanted to get a bat house, where would you go to get one?
Okay, in the brochure, we have a website. And that is our fundraiser. And we sell two kinds. One is a house that goes like on a building or a tree. And then the other one is a rocket box.
Oh.
And the rocket box stands anywhere. But we always want you to, we used to tell you to paint them black.
Yes.
And now we're not doing that anymore.
Okay.
We discovered that made the box too hot in the summer.
Yeah.
So
Yay.
now we leave them natural.
Thank you.
Yeah, so
Always
grab a
wanted to know.
brochure, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay,
I've always
anybody?
wanted a bat house.
Anybody? Yeah.
What is your favorite recovery story that you have to deal with these bats? That's heartwarming.
Well, you know, I've been around a long time, so I get a lot of them. But you know, I just love the fact that Dr. Merlin Tuttle saved 1.5 million bats under that Congress Avenue because they had already brought in the bulldozers and everything when he got there. And he's the founder of Bat Conservation International, and he's done more for bats than any person. So that's kind of, yeah. But one thing I always remember, I've been to a lot of his classes out in the field, and he doesn't like fish. I don't know why. I'm from the East Coast, and my father was a commercial fisherman and everything, so that always stuck with me that he didn't like fish. I don't know why. So, okay.
What would you say the hardest part of bat preservation?
The hardest part of rehabbing?
Of bat preservation.
Preservation.
Oh, preservation. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't quite get that last part. You know, it's ignorance is where it's at. And I think the minute you begin, and I don't mean to imply that just because you don't know about bats, but the minute you begin to research bats and find out how unique they are in the mammal world, then it helps you to help save bats. And you know, a lot of it is like putting up bat houses for loss of habitat and cutting back on those chemicals. You know, if you think you're not living in chemicals, even though you bring home all that food and everything and wash it, it permeates the skin, so you're still eating chemicals. So, you know, if we can cut down on farmers spraying, that's a big step, I believe, yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Any advice for people wanting to get into this kind of work?
Yeah, you know, usually what you have to do is you join like a wildlife habitat, like Sarvey Wildlife, and you know, you commit to training and maybe doing 1 day a week or something. And the Department of Wildlife, in order to be, you know, registered to do it, you have to have at least 2 years of working with rehabs. Yeah, but it's worth every moment because you not only learn about all the other wildlife that need your help, but you also are aiding in helping. So that's a good start. Yeah. Okay. Well, okay.
Since your bats like can't fly, do they ever get like depressed because of that? Or?
Well, that's what I was talking about when I was talking about the hoary bat. No matter what you do for this bat, feed him a wonderful diet and everything else, and then one day you just go in there and he's dead in the cage. And that happens at the zoo sometimes. And you know, you try to mimic the environment and make it as good as possible. And some animals could not be in captivity. And that's the truth. So, yeah. Well, thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful conference here. Thank you. And I hate those lights. So,